影片正式开始之前呢，让我们自我介绍一下，我们是荧光笔工作室 Highlight， 是全马最热血的知识型频道。我们以科普的方式聊关于马来西亚的社会、民生、时事议题等等。我们除了有街访之外呢，也有访谈哦。那有这么多的内容，有兴趣的朋友，你们已经订阅我们了吗？还没的话，现在就按赞、订阅、加分享吧。我们每个礼拜3跟礼拜6呢，都会准时上影片，让我们一起好好认识马来西亚。OK， 回到正片。
Today, we'll be discussing what is public design and how design strategy change public narrative and imaginations. So we also have 3 very experienced designers from different backgrounds with us. So without further ado, we will start with Tian, more on the infographic.
Before going through what is information design, I think it's quite important for us to have a common understanding of what is information. Information can be anything. It can be a message, can be a details, can be the slides I'm doing right now, can be a statistic or data. So all this thing requires some kind of design. Actually, in our life, everything that we see outside can and might be an information design piece. It's like a route sign here, like a menu here. We have the items, we have the description of the food, we have the price of the food, and all these are information. Like the IKEA instruction, because it's printed for all countries, so no text required for this, but it's understandable throughout if we're just looking at the graphics. So information design is everywhere. But what is information design? So I would say that information design makes complex information clear with the needs of user in mind. So let me show you an example. So this is a map that is done around 100 years ago. It's the London Metro map. And as you can see here, it's quite different from what we see today. In the past, they just plot all the stations according to the actual geographical location here. But you can see here, imagine here is KL Central and all the stations are around here. And here is Kajang, here is Kepong. We can see a lot of wasted space here. And it's hard to read all this information. Around 100 years ago, a designer named Henry Beck, he designed the modern London metro map. He only used like horizontal, vertical, and diagonal line, which create a lot of empty space for him to put all the text here. He also chose to omit most of the context of the map. We don't see any real representation of hills or places. He just chose to keep a river here so that people in London have a brief idea on where they are currently at. Yeah, so information designer, sometimes I would say it is an information manager. We actually choose what information to include and how in a clear manner that is easy to navigate. So let me show you another example, which is done by Victor. He is my ex-colleague in South China Morning Post. So he specialized in infographic design. It shows what is happening around the opening ceremony of Olympics. Compared to the last one, the designer chose to omit most of the context. But this one, he actually added a lot of context, like he done a lot of illustration, he put a map, he put some human graphic here to explain. Other than the opening ceremony, he also talks about the safety of the river. Is it safe for swimmer to swim there? It added some maps here explaining where is the path of the boat and where is the security area. The only thing we see are videos or photos, but we don't get a big picture of what is actually happening. Let's get into today's topic. So it's talking about how design can influence the public. So here is 3 of my points, and I will start with the first one. Design strategy can impact the usability of a product. Okay, so I believe a lot of here are designers or someone that are interested in design. And people always say that designers have a very sharp eyes, right? So I will give you a challenge. On the next slide, I will show you a medicine label here, and you have to tell me how many spoons of medicines I need to take every day. I'm currently very sick, and you have to feed me, okay? So, yeah, here is the medicine label. How many spoon? So, yeah, 1 spoon, but daily. 3 spoon. So every day, you need to take 3 spoon at the start of meal, and 1 spoon is 5 ml, so 3 spoon, 3 cents. Yeah, I think the issue is pretty clear. It's hard to read, but unfortunately, this is official medicine label used by Hong Kong hospital. When my time in Hong Kong, so we started the research project surrounding about this topic. We are not just trying to redesign this medicine label easily, but we need to think from the perspective of typography, layout, white space. This is because most of the people that use medicine label are elderlies. So they have to take medicine daily, and it's not an easy task because they have to deal with this every single day. The process is basically like this. We try to observe the use of the product in its natural habitats, meaning that we try to see how elderlies take their medicine. We go to their home and check their drawers, how they keep their medicines. We went to some of the old folks' home to see how the caregiver provide the medicine for the elderlies. On the stage 2, we experiment and do some testing with different parts of the design. Let's say we try to figure out what information is important for the elderlies. We test out some icons, some typography. What is the smaller size they can read? How large is it enough for them to read it clearly? And of course, we try with layout as well. And finally, we combine all of the insights that we gather from our testing and create a prototype that can make their life easier. Here is some of the photos from our site visit. So this is how they store their medicine in their house. And what are the unexpected things that we found is that the expiry date is actually very important. Now when I say it, it seems like a common sense, but when we are designing it, we will think that, oh, maybe the dosage is important, the use of medicine is important. But when we ask them to sort out what kind of information is necessary for them, and they will usually put the expiry date on the priority here. And another thing is the name of the patients. These are some experimental layout that we designed for testing. And because of our own bias, before we visit the old folks' home, we think that, okay, maybe the name is not important. We can put it vertically because Chinese can be places vertically. So we think that people that need to read the name can just read it here. People that don't need it can ignore it. But when we test it with some aunties, they're not very old, like 50 years old. And she took like 20 seconds and couldn't find the name. And it is totally not her problem. It's our problem. After that, we just abandoned this design and went to a more conventional. And here are some examples as well. For the icons, our plan is to design, let's say, if they need to edit in morning, afternoon. Because in Chinese, morning is 上午, which is up, and evening is 下午, is going down. It makes a lot of sense to make the sun with an arrow going up and the sun with an arrow going down to represent evening. But if we put it together, it's fine. But when we test it individually, they couldn't understand it's morning. So the easiest way is we put a chicken here, represent morning, and the sun going behind the mountain. Yeah, this is much clearer than this one. So here, a lot of common sense assumption turns out to be wrong. And putting in some effort to understand their needs can actually help inform us how to make a simple tweak to a big improvement in usability. Okay, so I'll move on to the next. Design strategy can inspire learning and a greater understanding of our society. So this is a project I worked for Malaysian Kidney a few years back. Target new voters, especially young voters, to understand what is going on the whole election thing. In terms of visual-wise, we try to use some more modern graphics and simple animations, more informal language to communicate about the elections. And we try to make the story easier to understand by making bubble represent a party, and they can split up, they can form together. And the best thing is you don't need to click anything to see the graphic. You just need to scroll, like you scroll your phone, and all this bubble will automatically present itself. If you are interested, you can just go to Malaysia Kini and you can check it in detail.
Okay, our next speaker, Kekfeng. So Kekfeng also the visual designer for I1 Festival. So if you see the poster or everything, it's all handled by Kekfeng.
Before I start the project, I always try to find the design questions. And I start to research and direction and solutions. For me, solution is important because you have many other ways to get there. Design question can be find out the answer. For me, it's very important because if you don't have a question, how could you find an answer and also a setback? So a setback for me is like to think back again. Why is the question come from? So can be many things. Design question can be the budget. They have lack of budget. So how are we going to solve it? And then maybe the material can be simple, and then we try to keep it simple. Can be nice as well. Sometimes, like basically, I used to have a lot of problem when not a problem. I would say it's nice to think about it because always I deal with like a business with a family business, the client. So they always tell me that all you can do, but they always discuss with the wife and husband and family. So kind of like a sell party. So can be really bad or can be really good, the outcome. So sometimes it's quite surprising. Sometimes can be quite weird. I would like to show two projects today. Nemo Science Museum is a visual identity I work for. And then this museum is located in the center of Amsterdam. So in the train station you go out, you can see this building. It's designed by Renzo Piano. Actually, I can show you the previous design. So this is what they had before. And this is the previous logo and uniform, and you can see it's quite classic. I try to figure out the design question for them because I always try to think about it, and I have to talk with the client to figure out. They want to explain their client because people always thought the first expression of Nemo Science Museum is only for kids. In fact, it's not. So everybody can come here and play, and they want to extend the platform because they have many platforms for like different age group, and then it's outdated. So I had to find out the keywords for them. So it had to be flexible and playful. Of course, to make a visual design of key visual, we have to do a lot of sketching to try out, to figure out. So in our team, at the time we have 4 people to work on it. So we keep trying on that. Like we try to sketch more and more to find out the right answer. So we always keep exploring. Quite lucky, and then the client select the proposal I did. Actually, from my perspective of this design, it's not only for a logo design. The logo design can be more than the logos. So I try to show like we make a motion of can be a logo, can part of the identity. So this is the logo of the Nemo Museum, and then the logo can be used like many ways. So it can be a flat as well. We try to extend it. Can be a uniform, and then we change the uniform as well because in the museum, a lot of kids running around like super colorful. Everybody is super colorful inside, and then we try to keep it black as simple as possible, and people can recognize the people very fast. So for the website. And then how we're going to implement to other applications, you can see that we use the same grade, and then we keep the system there. Super direct and super straightforward. Another project is about bus.my. I'm still working on it. It's a very long journey project for me. Before they come to bus.my, actually it's my bus. Actually the brand is a bit confusing, and because people always miscommunicate with like my bus and bus.my, and bus.my was slowly will fake off. They will change more and more. So it's kind of a expansion for like more states because they want to make it for more city. And then I try to like figure out what can I do and how far I can go for it. So it's like I try to find a keyword for myself and also for the design direction to give it a solution. And then the bus stop line, actually they are focusing on a town, a small town, and also a city and a village together. And then I make the logo for them. So it's like connecting together. They go expand together or spell. So this is a bus stop line logo. Yeah, I also asked a type design studio to work on the typeface. I think it's good to have our own typeface for the bus, for the words, how we're going to test. And plus, there we go for like different cities to applying with the identity. And then I try to make a system for that from the logos. From the logos, I can create more logos based on the grid, to share the same grid. And you can see the logo, they have 3 different sizes of circles. You can see the center is the biggest and the medium and the smallest. So based on these 3, and then these logos, they share the same system. And they can play with that. So you can see from here to here. So they have many different sizes, like 3 different sizes, but we create more different variety. And then it's according to the shape of the bus, we can play with that. So you can take the shape here and to apply to this. And so you won't feel boring for the bus because the graphic can still keep moving and changing, but they're still staying the same identity. This is one of the bus. They just launched, I think, last month. They just launched it. So they have more and more in Seremban and Malacca. So in further on, they will go to Ipoh, Kuala Terengganu as well. For my side, it's So I know.
So our next speaker is Nani Kahar. So she is a social architect and partner at LabDNA, an urban architectural design practice focused on design strategy, community driven.
Hi guys. Actually, I got a request to actually talk about Central Market because it's within the vicinity of I1 Festival. This is actually a generally evolution of Central Market, and I just want to talk about how I have been involved from phase evolution 2 to 5. Central Market initially was tend to be more catered for a little bit of tourism, 35% tourists, local 65%, and throughout pre-COVID, we had 75% tourists and 30% local. So now this is a conscious initiative by us to actually pivot that, to actually focus on local visitors. During COVID, I got a call from Ben who basically said they've lost 55% of their tenant. Now that's not good. Within literally 6 months, they lost 55% of the tenant, which means they've moved out. They closed their business. So our job is actually to look into how we can rejuvenate a Central Market, which was a great opportunity for us because, oh my God, that's fantastic. For him, no, it's not fantastic, it's bad news. I said, no, opportunity. So what we do is actually first look into our target audience. So target audience usually local tourists, and then we've got locals and the tourists. So for us, even for the tourists, we actually dissect them into very specific group because each group has very different palette actually, basically what they're into. One is the interstate, which is actually a big group because there are people from Sabah, Sarawak, East Coast coming to KL, picking up something from Central Market. Interregional, our biggest consumer, biggest kind of like tourists, which actually spends, and when they buy by the kotak, boxes on their head, boxes on their shoulder. It's a different type of shopping, you know. The international, slightly different, sensitive food, not experimental. They may not try your samba, may not try a bad thing, but they just buy little souvenirs. So with that, we actually looked into how we actually target them. Weekdays, tourists, weekend, Malaysians like generally, you know. So that's very important because we want this for Malaysian first. And then the other thing that the overarching branding, or rather overarching mission of Central Market is actually promoting Malaysia as cultural mosaic. This is very key for us because for the longest time, my generation grew up where we all wanted to be the global citizen. Everybody wants to be this universal person. So the idea of a melting pot was attractive. Campur-campur rojak, like America, you have to give up your Russianness, you have to give up your Indianness to become American. Malaysia is different. And constitutionally, we are allowed to have this kind of like different extension of oneself. So here in Central Market, we are promoting the idea of cultural mosaic, which celebrate the individual and the collective. And that's actually important. The idea of cultural mosaic is actually very paramount in our strategy, which also include not just our ethnicity, our heritage culture, but also texture, color, narrative, etc. So linguistically also very important. So key thing is develop social spaces, because social spaces are very key to kind of actually cater for the community and for the retail. So when we talk about branding on our side, we talk about culture. We're not interested in the nitty-gritty. It's like, what culture are you trying to cultivate? At the end of the day, what is your end goal? If your end goal is to make more money, not good. It's all about nation building. It is what you want Malaysia to. Can Malaysia be a better place? So these are the questions that we always ask. Actually, very, very important, actually. If a project development is just purely to make money, we probably would not be interested. We also look into, like this green spot is actually land central market lease from DBKL. It comes with a lot of obligation. Then we try and carve, okay, what are the spaces that we can take around central market and start claiming them. And then the public space that we can carve from the atrium. So this is actually just a collage of what central market was, this at the top during COVID period. So just remember, the developer has lost a lot of money, millions throughout the 2 years of COVID, and it's not as if they can rejuvenate and have a lot of money. So a lot of the kind of initiative we do or upgrading work have to be incremental, actually quite important that they're incremental. Some of them have a certain nature now, and they all have moved because like area like this is the lane between Central Market and Annex Building. There's all these little boxes, which is all like rent, can make money here, all rent. We had to get rid of it, because you have 10 years later, you can come back, you can still see the same content. So how do you create vibrancy? Must change every week. Take that out, replace it with bazaar, etc. So we had to reclaim a lot of spaces of which they have no revenue. But what we do is that we got news early this year. The Ben Bong said like, hey, Nani, you know what? We lost money from this thing, but with all the event, I'm actually making just as much money. So there is a give and take, but the transition will happen. It's always a process for any development. Coming back to the center of Central Market, so how do we pivot the content of Central Market? When we came in, there was a lot of kind of like criticism that the stuff are all made in China. I think one of my team, they did a survey and audit all the barang. Every kedai, every makcik pakcik story, we want to know who buys your product, etc. We found that, no lah, 87% made in Malaysia. It just looks like made in China, but it is actually made in Malaysia. So how? Auntie, what does the local buy? You have to identify. They buy, can you put it in front, can put at the back. They don't have money to buy more stuff because they lost money for the 2 years. So it's a gradual process of holding their hand to ask them to pivot, change their merchandise to suit local, and then when they make a bit more money, get more stuff. So it's a very long, tedious process for us actually to work with the makcik and pakcik there. Coming back to just the general plan, just so to pivot the retail strategy, is actually what we did was, you see the pink section? It was already empty, half empty already. We had to move 61 tenants to the other half by sheer persuasion. Relationship with landlord and tenant are not that great, like any other mall in town, because hutang already, COVID or no COVID, still you got full rental or partial rental. So I think with that we decided to actually, this is where I thought was a great opportunity to kind of like create historical continuity from the wet market, what it was, and to create a grocer, come this thing. I think it's 6-8 months now, so we're still pivoting what products sell, what doesn't product, but there's still product they don't sell, we still want to keep them because of its authenticity and some of the community initiative behind it. So we also do food, so they're like mini restaurants inside there, so they're a little bit better, food quality is just a bit better, So for us, access to market is actually very important. A lot of the community that we work with, they don't need money. They want access to space. So I can do my art and culture, or access to market so I can sell my ideas. So those are the key things that we look for when we actually build ecosystem. So with that, you must have a platform where people can plug in. I think some of the stuff that we do actually is also to contribute to Kuala Lumpur Creative Culture District, which is actually the new area which Think City and DBKL is building. Post-COVID, no one wants to look into the future. It's too dark. People were not looking forward for ideas anymore. They were looking backwards. So we acknowledge that, and also Central Market has been quite heritage or historical thing. We kind of have to say, okay, all our programming and thing must be nostalgic. Why? Because second-hand stuff. So it was very timely because most designers, fashion people went bust during COVID because they hutang a lot of money. So a lot of pre-love buildings. So that went on. We kind of promoted that for up to last of next year. So our bazaar tend to be a bit more like that. So we kind of like pivot towards nostalgia. That means, yeah, still inspired by nostalgia, but the barang is baru lah. We hope that a lot of our vendors are heading towards that because we're trying to push them to be more creative towards this creative ecosystem that we want to do, but through nostalgia. Okay, so the other thing that we want to talk finally is actually why we do all these spaces and do this kind of activity, because I think for us regular engagement is quite important, because if someone comes to a place often, they start building memory. There is a series of events that build up their memories. So building memories is actually important because we feel that eventually that leads to place attachment. Now, place attachment for us is actually critical because that gives you a sense of place, sense of belonging, and you really feel you're part of the community. That leads to brand loyalty. This is what ultimately people that we work with, whether as graphic designers, architects, they're looking for that brand loyalty. That's it for today.
What makes a good design?
Good design is consideration for users, and yeah, it's always invisible. But the good thing about not noticing it is because it's good, so you don't feel unhappy when using it.
A good design can be make people have a conversation as well. You would discuss about it. Also, you have attention on it. So also for me, at some point also as a can be described as a good design.
For me, I think you see through that sometimes on my side because we design by persuasion. It's all these things. So I'm not particular about aesthetic. That's why I tend to design less now. Actually, I'm more concerned about content development.
I think today is a very fruitful sharing session, and thank you all for being here.